My dad gave our family land to my wife. Then I found a tape that changed everything I thought I knew about her and my brother. I buried my father on a wind-whipped Thursday under a cloudless sky in Rockwood, Texas. Dust blew across the dry cemetery as the casket lowered into the earth, and I realized something strange. I wasn't crying. Not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't feel anything anymore. Even at 67, I felt like a boy watching the one man who always seemed unshakable disappear into the ground. The crowd was thin. A couple old lawyers Dad had mentored, a handful of my old students from the college, and her, Emily, my wife. She stood there beside me, elegant as ever, sunglasses hiding whatever her eyes weren't ready to show. But I knew her well. She wasn't crying. She wouldn't. Emily didn't cry at funerals. Not at my brother Ryan's. Not when our dog of 16 years died. Not today. Back at the house, Dad's lawyer, Martin Greeley, cornered us before we had a chance to change clothes. He kept his will updated right to the end, Martin said, tapping a leather folder. If you two have time, we can get it done now. We followed him into the study. Martin sat across from us, opened the folder, and began reading in that same casual legal tone he'd probably used 1,000 times. To my son, Jake Whitman, I leave the house on Sycamore Lane and all remaining accounts under my name. Pause. And to Emily Whitman, wife of Jake, I leave the Rockwood property, including land, house, and full equity in Whitman Heritage Holdings, LLC. I blinked, once, slowly. My hands didn't move. My mouth didn't open. But inside, something cracked. Emily shifted slightly. Not a gasp. Not a protest. Just a shift, like she already knew. Martin looked up. That catch you off guard? Emily beat me to it. That has to be a mistake, she said. Too quick. Too smooth. Martin raised an eyebrow. Your father-in-law amended his will 6 months ago. I have the documents and witnesses. Everything's airtight. 6 months. That was right after his last stroke. The same month, Emily started driving out to see him, alone. Said she was checking on him. Said she was bringing him meals. I'd just gotten out of back surgery. I didn't ask too many questions. I was grateful. Now I felt like an idiot. We drove home in silence. Not one word between us. Emily poured herself a glass of wine and went to bed early. I sat in the garage, staring at nothing. Then I remembered the desk. Dad's old roll-top. He insisted we move it into the assisted living facility with him when he couldn't live alone anymore. Said it was the only thing that helped him feel useful. I opened the bottom drawer and found it immediately. A sealed envelope. No writing. Wax stamp. Thick. Inside. A small cassette. A silver key. A folded note in my father's unmistakable handwriting. Play this when you're ready to stop pretending. My hands were shaking as I fed the tape into the old player still plugged in behind the tool bench. Click. Static. Then his voice. Slower than I remembered, but still Dad. If you're listening, then I'm gone. Jake,
I'm sorry.
I should have told you the truth about Emily and Ryan. I hit pause, and for 10 full minutes, I sat there in the dark, breathless, because I suddenly realized I didn't know the woman sleeping upstairs, and I didn't know my own brother either. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. The cassette paused, my father's voice frozen mid-confession. The garage was cold, but I couldn't feel it. My body had gone numb. Like my brain refused to let anything in until I pressed play again. So I did. His voice returned, slower now, like each word took effort. You always thought I didn't trust Emily because she was different from your mother. That wasn't it. It was your brother. It was Ryan. I blinked. Ryan? They were close. Closer than you ever knew. I thought it ended when she married you. I let myself believe that. Maybe because I didn't want to dig deeper. But after Ryan died, things started surfacing. There was a pause on the tape. I could hear him cough, a deep, crackling kind of cough I'd last heard in the hospital. The kind of sound that tells you time is running out. I found letters from her, months after the wedding. Jake. She never stopped writing him. My stomach dropped. I confronted her. She lied, of course. Said they were just friends. Said Ryan helped her through tough times. But I didn't buy it. I didn't have proof. And when I asked her to stop visiting me after the stroke, it wasn't because I was tired. I just couldn't stomach the lie anymore. Click. The tape stopped.
No explanations.
No advice, just an accusation delivered from the grave. For a moment, I stared at the player like it might say more. Then I stood up, heart pounding, and went inside. The house was dark. Emily was already asleep, or pretending to be. I sat at the kitchen table, hands still trembling. I didn't know what I was feeling. Rage? Shock? Confusion. All I knew was I needed proof. That tape wasn't enough. Not yet. So I went to the attic. When Ryan died in that car crash, it broke something in our family. He was the star, the golden boy, a doctor with charm, charisma, and the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. My dad never said it, but we all knew. Ryan was his favorite. After the funeral, Dad handed me all of Ryan's belongings. "You were his brother," he said. "You figure out what to do with it." I never opened the boxes. Just taped them shut and shoved them into the attic like a memory I wasn't ready to sort through. But now I had no choice. I found the boxes behind the insulation and old furniture. Cut them open with my pocket knife. At first, it was what I expected: medical books, travel souvenirs, a few photos. Then I hit something I didn't expect. A journal. Leather-bound. Worn. Personal. And not addressed to me. The inside flap said, "A for when I'm gone." I opened it. It wasn't a journal. It was a collection of letters. Dozens of them. Every single one addressed to Emily. I flipped to the first page. "You told me you needed safety. That you had to choose the life that made sense. But I'm still here. And you're still the only thing that feels real." Another letter, dated 2 years after our wedding. "He doesn't see you. Not like I did. He thinks you're fine. You smile like nothing's wrong. But I know when you're pretending." My throat went dry. This wasn't ancient history. This wasn't a fling. It was a full-blown love story. One that didn't stop just because I married her. Suddenly, the air in the attic felt thinner. The world I thought I knew was slipping sideways. And for the first time since the funeral, I realized something. I wasn't mourning my father. I was mourning the life I thought I had. The next morning, I didn't tell Emily where I was going. I just got in the car and drove across town to her gallery, the place she called her second home. Funny, looking back, how I never realized how much of a double life was hiding behind those perfect white walls and carefully placed paintings. The bell above the front door jingled as I stepped inside. Same citrus scent. Same soft track lighting. Same polished calm that had fooled me for years. But now everything felt off, like I was standing in a room filled with props. Art as armor. Design as disguise. She didn't notice me at first. Emily was near the back, speaking to a man in a tan blazer. Maybe early 50s, confident in that smooth, rehearsed way. His hand movements were a little too expressive, his smile a little too wide. He leaned in as she spoke, just enough to notice. She laughed at something he said, and then I saw it, that smile. The one she used to give Ryan. I'd seen it in the pictures. I'd read it in his letters. The slight tilt of her head, the way she looked down while grinning, like she was trying to hide something sweet. Not a professional smile. Not a married smile. Something older. Something private. She noticed me then, straightened up just a little. "Jake," she said, her tone light, casual. "This is Thomas Blake, one of our collectors from Millridge." Thomas extended a hand, and I shook it out of reflex. "Your wife's got an incredible eye," he said, motioning to some oversized piece of abstract chaos on the wall. "I'm putting this one in my entryway." I nodded politely, didn't care. He lingered for a few more lines, then made his exit with a final, "Let's catch up next week." Emily watched him go for just a second too long, then turned back to me. "To what do I owe the surprise visit?" she asked, folding her glasses and setting them gently on the counter. "I wanted to ask you something," I said, keeping my voice flat. "About Dad and Ryan." She blinked once. A flicker of something passed through her eyes. Could have been nothing. Could have been guilt. "What about them?" "You visited Dad a lot toward the end," I said. She nodded slowly. "He was lonely." "You also went to the lawyer's office with him." Her hands stopped moving, just for a second. Then she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and said, "He asked me to. Said he didn't want to deal with the paperwork alone." I waited, watched her face, still smooth, still composed, but I was learning to see the cracks now. Why would he leave you the Rockwood property? I asked. She looked down, pretending to straighten a framed artist bio that didn't need fixing. I was surprised too, Jake. I didn't expect it. Were you? I asked. She finally looked at me, and something changed in her face. Still soft, still calm, but her eyes weren't wide anymore. They were focused, like someone who'd decided it was time to stop pretending. Your father and I had more in common than you think, she said. I didn't respond, just stared. And Ryan, I said after a long silence. You knew him better than you told me. She sighed, quietly. We were close. Before you. How close? She gave a short, breathy laugh. Not warm, almost bitter. Let's not do this, she said. Digging through old pain won't help anyone. I stepped closer. You wrote him letters, even after we were married. That stopped her. She turned her back for a moment. Her hands clenched just slightly. Then she asked, without facing me, You read them? I did. Silence. When she turned back around, her eyes weren't soft anymore. They were sharp. I loved him, she said. Just like that. No drama.
No excuse.
Just truth. And I chose you, she added. That part hurt worse than the first, because it sounded like I was a compromise. I hadn't spoken to Karen Fields in over 10 years. She and Emily used to be inseparable back in the early years, before careers, distance, and time slowly pulled everyone into their own corners. I remembered Friday nights on our back porch, playing cards with the two of them, laughing over red wine and takeout. Karen always brought dessert. Emily always cleaned house in poker. Then Ryan died, and Karen disappeared from our lives like a ghost. At the time, I chalked it up to grief. People drift, friendships fade. But now I wasn't so sure. Now I wondered if Karen hadn't vanished on accident. Maybe she walked away on purpose. I found her number still saved in my phone. I hadn't called it in years. My finger hovered over the screen for a long time before I pressed call. She picked up on the third ring. Hello, Karen? It's Jake. There was a pause. A long one. Jake Whitman. Yeah. I know this is out of the blue, but I need to talk to you. About Emily. And about Ryan. The silence on the other end wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that has weight. She didn't ask questions. Come by the shop, she said quietly. It's quieter in the mornings. Her bookstore was tucked away near the edge of Cedar Hill's old district, wedged between a dusty record store and a barber shop that hadn't changed its sign since the Reagan years. The moment I stepped inside, it hit me like a wave. Lavender, dust, and paper, just like it always smelled. Karen hadn't changed much. Her hair had gone silver at the edges, tied up in a loose knot. Her glasses rested low on her nose. She wore that same half-sarcastic, half-saintly expression I remembered from across poker tables. She didn't smile when she saw me. She just motioned to the old leather armchair near the counter. He said. She stayed standing. I figured this call was coming someday, she said. That threw me off. You knew. She folded her arms. I suspected. For years, especially after Ryan died. Emily was never the same. She told me they were close. Karen exhaled. A dry sound, half laugh, half sigh. Close is a coward's word, Jake. Emily and Ryan were in love. And it wasn't over when she married you. The words hit harder than I expected, even after everything I'd already uncovered. I leaned forward. Even after the wedding? Karen nodded. Slowly. She tried to let him go. I believed that, but he was a fire she couldn't stop chasing. You were safe. Ryan was the storm. I swallowed hard. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked. Karen shrugged, but there was no lightness in it. Because it wasn't our place. Because you looked happy. And because I think a part of her really did want to build something real with you, if only to bury what she had with him. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the journal. I handed it to her without a word. Karen didn't open it, just stared at the cover like she recognized it. He left this for her, I said. It was in his things, tucked away like a secret that didn't want to stay buried. She looked at me for a long time, then said, I saw her once, a few months after the funeral, in the back of my shop, crying while holding a picture of him. She'd just come in to drop something off, but she ended up standing there in the back room, lost. I offered her a tissue. She didn't even notice I was there. Did she ever cry for me? I asked. Karen didn't answer. She didn't need to. We both knew the answer. I thought the land in Rockwood was mine, I said. Turns out Dad gave it to her. Karen finally sat across from me, slowly sinking into the other chair like someone bracing for more bad news. He hated her, she said. Why would he? I think it was a message, I said. Not a gift, a warning. She looked down at the journal still resting in her hands, then up at me. God help you, Jake. The Rockwood house hadn't been touched in over a decade. Once a weekend getaway, it had become more of a storage locker, full of dusty furniture and used tools and the leftovers of a family that used to gather there before everything cracked apart. When Dad passed the land to Emily, I hadn't even questioned it at first. But now, after the tape, after the journal, after Karen's confirmation, I knew I had to go back. Not just to walk the land, but to find what he left behind. I left Emily a short note on the kitchen counter. Just 7 words. I'm going to Rockwood. Don't follow me. It was just after 4 a.m. when I pulled onto the dirt road. The headlights cut through a thick fog, and the familiar wooden gate creaked open like it didn't remember how to move anymore. The house stood still on the hill, cracked paint, empty porch, but solid, like it had been waiting. The front door stuck a little before swinging open. Inside, it smelled like dry wood and old rain. I passed through the living room, past the dust-covered couch and the shelf of books no one had read in years, until I reached the back bedroom. That's where the safe had been. I remembered it now, tucked behind a false panel in the closet. Ryan and I used to sneak comic books into it when we were teenagers, like we were guarding treasure. Later, Dad started using it to store files, legal documents, family records, things he didn't want at the office. I hadn't seen that safe since before his first stroke, but I remembered the sound it made when it opened. That little metal click that let you know you were somewhere private. I pulled back the wooden panel. There it was, dusty, locked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small brass key, the one I'd found with the first cassette. The fit turned. Inside were only 3 things. A slim folder, a small brown box, and another cassette. This one had no label, just a single piece of masking tape across the top with one word, scribbled in faded black ink. Truth. I stared at it for a long time, then pulled the old tape player from my bag, popped the cassette in, and pressed play. It started with silence. Then my father's voice filled the room. Tired, serious, measured. Jake, if you found this, it means you already know more than I wanted you to. But you need the rest. You deserve it. I sat down on the edge of the bed. Emily and Ryan weren't just involved. They were planning to leave. Together. They'd been seeing each other long before your wedding. And when she married you, she was trying to convince herself that she'd picked the safer future. That she could bury the rest. I didn't breathe. But Ryan couldn't let go. And neither could she. I found the letters. Found the photos. I confronted her. She denied it all. Said it was in the past. But then, just a few weeks before Ryan's accident, she came to me. Told me they were thinking of leaving. Said she wanted to tell you. My fingers dug into the edge of the mattress. Then the crash happened, and everything changed. She didn't leave. She stayed. Played the grieving sister-in-law. Wore the mask of a devoted wife. And you believed it. Because you're good. Because you love with both hands. There was a long pause. Then, I didn't give her the land as a gift. I gave it to her to tie her to the truth. That place, it was theirs, not yours. I wanted it out of your hands, out of your future. I didn't want her name anywhere near your home or your legacy. So I put it where it belonged, out there, with the ghost of what she chose to bury. Then softer. Don't let someone else's lie become your story. Click. The tape stopped. The silence in that room felt alive. I sat still, listening to the echo of my father's last words. Out there, with the ghost of what she chose to bury. I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, everything I needed to transfer the Rockwood property into my name, or into no one's. My father had left it all in place. The paperwork, the proof, all of it. He'd handed me the match. Now it was up to me whether or not I'd light the fire. By the time I got home, the morning sun had turned the sky gold. That soft Texas light made everything outside look peaceful, like nothing bad had ever happened here. But inside me the storm had passed, not because the truth didn't hurt, It did. But because now I finally understood what I was dealing with. Emily was in the kitchen when I walked in, dressed, hair done, coffee poured, sitting at the table like any other morning, like she hadn't spent the last 30 years building a marriage on the ashes of someone else's love. She looked up from the newspaper when I walked in. "You went to Rockwood," she said. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked past her, straight into the den, and set the old tape deck down on the coffee table. She followed, quietly. No panique. Just that same carefully measured walk she always had when she didn't know what version of herself to be yet. I pulled the second cassette from my pocket and held it up. "You know what this is?" Her eyes flicked to it, then away. She didn't answer, so I slid it into the player. Pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. He talked about the affair, about the plan to leave, about how Emily came to him, not to apologize but to prepare, about how the crash changed everything, and how she stayed not because she loved me, but because she didn't know what else to do. And then came the line that stayed with me even after the tape stopped spinning. "Don't let someone else's lie become your story." When the recording ended, the room was dead silent. Emily stood there like a statue, hands clasped in front of her. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just whispered, "I didn't ask him to do that." "I know," I said, "but you didn't say no either." She sat down across from me, carefully, like every movement now required strategy. "All these years," I said, "you've been mourning him. In my house, in my bed, in silence. And I've been here, thinking we were building a life." Her voice barely broke the air. "I tried, Jake. I really did. I wanted it to be real. But it wasn't," I said. "Not the way it should have been." She looked up. "I gave you everything I had left." "That's the problem," I said calmly. "You gave me the leftover pieces." She started to say something else, maybe to explain, maybe to soften the blow, but I held up my hand. "No more stories. No more poetry. Just facts." I reached into a manila envelope and slid a stack of papers across the table. She looked at them, confused. "What is this?" "Transfer of ownership," I said. "I'm donating the Rockwood property to the county's Cultural Preservation Board. It'll be protected land. No building. No sale. No inheritance. And your name has been legally removed." She blinked. You're giving it away?" "I'm burying it," I said. "The way it should have been buried a long time ago." She leaned back slowly, like her body couldn't figure out whether to collapse or fight. "We've been married 30 years, she said, as if that number was supposed to protect her. I nodded. "And for all 30, you were faithful to a memory." "I loved you, Jake," she said quietly. "No," I said. "You loved what I represented. But me? You never really saw me." She looked like she wanted to argue, like she had a dozen clever defenses lined up. But none of them came, because I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. I was finished. "You're keeping the house," I told her. "I'm moving out. I've already signed a lease on a cabin up near Millridge. I'll be gone by Monday." She stared at me, stunned. "So that's it? You're just walking away?" "No," I said, standing. "I'm walking toward myself." I paused in the doorway, then pressed play on the first cassette, the one that started it all. My father's voice echoed into the room. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone." I let it hang in the air. Then I walked out. She didn't follow. She didn't follow me that day. Not into the hallway. Not out the door. Not even to the car. And for 3 full days there was silence between us. No texts. No calls. No angry emails demanding explanations. I thought maybe she'd finally understood. That maybe she was doing what I'd asked. Letting the truth settle. Letting me go. I was wrong. On the 4th morning, my phone rang just after sunrise. It was Martin Greeley, my father's lawyer. "Jake," he said, already sounding worn out, "you're not gonna like this. Try me." "She's contesting the deed transfer," he said. "Filed a formal objection with the county. Claims she was promised the Rockwood land verbally, and never agreed to give up her rights." I laughed, not out of humor,